Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining me on this video. Today, we're going to be talking about how to sell property deals that are on Rightmove. Thank you very much for joining me. Let's get stuck into it. So, how to sell property deals that are on Rightmove. So, we talk a lot about Rightmove and we talk a lot about sourcing properties from Rightmove because, like we say in the training, 95% of properties are sold through estate agents. Estate agents predominantly sell properties on Rightmove. So why would you discount yourself from the biggest platform that shows you properties in the UK? And therefore, that's one of the first places that we look at for property deals. So really, this is a question all about securing properties because, estate agents sell properties from Rightmove and they do it very successfully. But how can you see that property on Rightmove and then sell it on to an investor? Now, I'm going to make a couple of assumptions in this video because there's lots of different ways or lots of different kinds of people that try to sell property deals. You might have happened across one property and it looks really good, but it's not right for you and you want to sell that one property. But this and the way that we're going to look at our structure is going to focus on the kind of franchisee, the kind of person that is regularly selling deals. So not somebody that's just doing it as a one-off. And we've got a different solution for that, which I'll tell you about later. But really what we're going to be looking at is the kind of person, the kind of business plan where we're looking at selling deals regularly. Now, it might not be that you're selling deals every single week. Some of our top performing deal trading franchisees sell. Well, I talked to one last week, actually, and he just secured 120 flats. I talked to him 24 hours later and he'd sold 15. So, not everybody's working to that kind of scale. But we're looking at selling deals regularly. That's the kind of process and structure that we've put in place here. So a basic overview of what you need to do is find the properties that are on Rightmove. You then need to list them, list one of those properties. So you might have been looking in your area for, I don't know, a 2 up, 2 down sort of flip, that kind of thing. And you're looking for at least 25% profit margin from that property, and you find something at 21%. But you find loads that are around 21%. You might find 10 of them. Now, what should you do with those 10 properties? Would you list all of them? Well, probably not, because they're all the same kind of deal, aren't they? So if you list 10 of them, you're just going to get the same investors that are inquiring about those 10 deals. So what's the point? Why are you making your business harder to manage? Because now you've got to look across 10 properties to find those investors' details and not just across one. So the way that we recommend that you do it is that you list, if you've got a number of properties that are all the same kind of returns, the same kind of benefits to the investor to buy, list one of them. You list that one on the app. You get all of those inquiries going into that one property instead of spread across many, and now they're a lot easier for you to manage. So you'll then get the leads. And then when you're talking to those investors, so let's say that you list one of these properties and that property is a 22% profit margin. And let's say that for argument's sake, you get 30 investors that are inquiring. Obviously, you're not just going to talk about that one property that you've advertised on Rightmove, that you've advertised on the app. You are going to talk about all the properties that you've found because it's in your interest to sell as many as you possibly can. So remember, when an investor inquires about a property, if you do have 30 investors inquire, you've only got one property to sell, according to them, as far as they can see on the app. So you're going to have that conversation with the majority of people that inquire about your property leads, You're going to have that conversation of, I'm really sorry, that one's already been reserved, but I do have this, or I do have something else that's very similar. Can I take you through the numbers? It's a totally reasonable conversation to have. And the vast majority of those investors are going to say, yes, take me through the numbers of something else. Because you've got that other property that's sitting there, that's waiting to go, that they might not have seen because the numbers are so similar to that original one that you listed, you didn't list it individually. Now, remember, I've put this slide on here because I want to remind you about all the stuff that we do to get the investors in and where the investors are sitting when you first have a conversation with them. So we at HQ go out and we advertise and we use our marketing team in order to attract investors into our network, into our ecosystem. We go out with downloads and emails and podcasts and presentations and PR. and documents and white papers and our YouTube channel. And the investors see all of this stuff, and then they subscribe to a mailing list. That's the first thing that they do. So they're on a mailing list. They've actively chosen to go onto our mailing list. And so we send them a series of emails, and that's represented by the green line of documents across here. So we send them a series of emails, and in that series of emails, we also send them a property deal, and that property deal might be yours. Or they might have downloaded the app and be getting a series of emails from, again, that we've created, a workflow of emails that we've created to skill them up, to build the brand of Source, to talk about all the amazing stuff that our franchisees are doing. And then they'll find that one deal on the app. They'll see that deal on the app that they really like, that suits what their requirements are, which is your deal. And then they inquire about that deal on the app. So either way, they've actively chosen to be part of that information, to get that information from us and to get deals from us. And then they have to actively click on your deal to get more information about your deal. So this is your deal, the red email there, or it could be the app. And then that goes into create a list of investors for you. So you get those investor inquiries, and they come straight into your CRM system. So those investor inquiries come straight to your CRM system, or they come straight into your agent app. So you can see them, you can manage them. And then the first thing that you should do is have a conversation with them. Please don't email them, because you'll get a massive drop-off rate. You'll get a huge drop-off rate if you start to email people. But if you call them and you have a conversation about them, that immediately gets them engaged. And you've got a far better chance of selling a property to them if you call them. If you talk to the highest performing franchisees who sell deals day after day after day, they barely email any of their clients. They talk to all of them. So you have that conversation. And remember, we've got a list of questions that you should be asking every single investor that you talk to. And I have got them on a slide in just a couple of minutes, just to remind you what those questions should be. So you have a conversation with them, and then you choose whether they go into an active investor category or a mailing list category or a not interested category. So your active investor category should be for your top tier of investors. And you've probably only got 4, 5 or 6 people in here. Your mailing list can have as many people in as you want to have in that mailing list. And that should be determined, whether they go into the active investor category or the mailing list category. That should be determined by a couple of things. First of all, whether you get a good sense that they're going to buy a property from you, because there are lots of tire kickers out there. There are lots of people that are looking at property, but really, are they going to get something across the line because that's what you want? Possibly not. So therefore, whether you get a good feel that they're going to buy something from you, and then you have a list of requirements that they have to fulfill to get into that active investor category, because what you're looking to achieve from that active investor category is that you can disclose all information to them. You can give them the address of the property. You can hook them up with a conversation with the person that owns the property. It doesn't matter. And the way that you protect yourself from that person buying that property without you getting paid your sourcing fee is with the source to order contract. And that source to order contract between you and that investor protects you. That source to order contract means that if that investor buys any property that you have introduced to them, then you are due your sourcing fee. And that sourcing fee is listed in the source to order contract as well. So everybody knows exactly where they stand. So you've got that source to order contract. So let's imagine that a new lead comes in and I pick up the phone and I ask them those 10 questions and everything goes well. I get a really good feel from that person that they're going to buy a property. Now, at the end of that contract, I'm going to say to them, okay, so to move forward, if you want to see more details about a property that I'm going to show you, then I need you to sign a contract which protects you and it protects me, and it sets out the terms of our agreement so that we both know exactly where we stand moving forward. And if at that point they say, oh, I don't want to sign an agreement, you don't show them the property. You walk away from that investor. If you can't solve that problem that they have, you walk away from them, because what's the point? If, however, they sign that contract quickly and efficiently, then they're going to go onto your active investor list. There's a couple of other criteria as well, but we'll get to that in just a second. The first thing that I wanted to address was how you protect yourself. And it's all in that source to order contract. Now, remember, at this point, we've advertised one deal on the app and we've got 30 investors. Now, from those 30 investors, I might have the conversation with some of them that, that I'm really sorry that property's already been reserved. But let's have a conversation. Let's find out what you're looking for. In fact, I've got something else that's very similar to that other one. Would you like to see the details for it? You'd still get them to sign that source to order agreement. That is the most important thing that you can do in order to protect yourself. So these are the investor questions. So the reason that we've written these questions down is because most sources that are out there in the world are fairly terrible. And we want you to be a cut above. We want the investors to be coming to you to want to work with you, because what you're offering is so much better than what else they can find out there, probably on Facebook from talking to investors. So why did they inquire? So what is it exactly that they're looking for? And the purpose of those questions is not to get them to say, I'm looking for HMOs, and for you to say, okay. The purpose of those questions is to then go into and delve into their knowledge. So some investors have made inquiries about properties where they've seen one webinar and now they want to buy a HMO in the north. And that's not really good enough for me, because they've seen one webinar and now they want to buy a HMO in the north. But do they know what their options are? Do they know what their choices are? Because if you can educate them, if you can upskill them, they're more likely to come back to you, because they're growing, they're learning, they're becoming a more savvy investor because of their relationship with you. So why did they inquire? What are they looking for? What have they already got? Have you already got properties? Can you show me how, tell me about your property credibility? What's the difference between a good return and a bad return? This is absolutely critical, because if their difference between a good return and a bad return is, let's say, a 10% yield on a HMO, so 10% works, 9% doesn't. And then you present them a property that's a HMO conversion that's potentially an 11% yield, and they say, oh no, I don't want to move forward with that one, I don't like that one. Then I'd be having the conversation with them that goes a little bit like, okay, you said that 10% was good enough. This is 11%. So this meets your criteria and you're not moving forward on it. I'm only going to show you one more property that hits your criteria. And if you don't buy that second one, I'm not going to show you anymore. You come out of my active client list and I put you in my mailing list, because I'm not here to waste my time. Now, if you want to have a conversation with me about what your criteria is, let's do that. If you want to move your criteria from a 10% yield to a 12% yield, I've got no problem with that whatsoever. But let me make it absolutely clear. If I'm spending my time finding that property for you and then you don't buy it, we don't work together. That's not how I work. I only work with people who are serious about building their portfolio. Okay, so that's how that conversation would go. And that's why asking that question of what's the difference between a good return and a bad return is so critical. Also, what are they trying to achieve long term? Because now you've upskilled them, you've built their knowledge, you've helped them out. And now if you can understand what their why is, which is a very powerful thing. So if you understand what their why is, then, and you can show how you're going to help them achieve that, again, they're bought into you. They're only coming to you. They're not looking at any other sources that are out there. They're only coming to you. What is in the pot? So how much money have they got? And how much money can they add into that pot every 12 months? So you can understand how much money they've got, so you can create a plan for them for how you can spend that money to help them achieve their 10%, 11%, 12%, whatever it is. And you can help them get there quickly and efficiently, again, to buy in their time with you. And then you create that plan. You'd show them how they're going to reach their goals. You'd give them a timeline. You'd give them an approximate cost of how much money they're going to need. And you create a very, very, very strong relationship with them. So these are the questions that you need to ask each and every investor. But of course, from this, remember, we're talking about selling deals from Rightmove. So you'd ask them all those questions. You'd go through all of that, and potentially the deal that they inquired about that you've put on the app isn't the right deal for them, because you might have challenged them that they don't actually know that much about HMO. So why is that the right thing to do? Why wouldn't they put their money into something else, which is still going to achieve the same return, but doesn't require as much in-depth knowledge? So you're helping them out. But of course, all the time you're bearing in mind, you've advertised that one property deal on the app that they've inquired about, and you've got another 15, 16 sitting behind that you can also sell. Now, just to take a step back at the moment and go through what we've learned so far, you've put a deal on the app. It's one deal. You've found another 16 deals that are exactly like it. That one deal that you've put on the app generates investor inquiries. You have that conversation with them about why they inquired, what are they looking for, what have they already got, what's the difference between a good return and a bad return, what are they trying to achieve long term, what's in the pot, what can be added to the pot every 12 months. And you have a really good understanding that actually that deal that they inquired about, that is the right deal for them. Now, you'd probably take that conversation now and say, okay, so I'd really like to show you more information, but before I do that and disclose all of the details of this property, we need to sign an agreement to make sure that we all understand where we sit with this. And that agreement means that any property that I introduce to you, you need to pay me the sourcing fee that we've agreed. And that sourcing fee that we've agreed upon is 2% of the purchase price. You can send them the source to order contract, they can sign that, and now you can disclose those details to that person. But also, if you get a really good feel for them, if they've got money in their pocket, if they're looking to not only buy one but buy many, you can then call them, say this time next week, and introduce more properties to them. And you can introduce them to the full details of those properties straight away because they've already signed the source to order agreement. I hope that makes sense. So you've got your active investor group, and they should always be called. So if I've got somebody who's signed a source to order agreement and is in my active investor group, I pick up the phone and I talk to them. You could be standing in an estate agency and you could have done the maths, done the numbers on the back of in your notebook that you've got with you. And you could pick up the phone and talk to those active investors, and you could say, I found this property, these are the numbers, this is what I think it'll achieve. I'm standing in the estate agency now, I'd really like to make an offer for you. Can I go ahead with this? That's the relationship that you want to have with those active investors. And if you look at that structure, the reason this is the chosen structure that we've gone for here at Source is because that makes selling properties so much easier. Now, if you find just one property and you haven't got the other properties sitting behind that, or if you accidentally have found a property that you could sell on, and you're not looking to be a property trader as part of your sort of ongoing daily routine, then this probably isn't the right strategy for you. The right strategy for you would probably be selling it at an auction, because the auction house manage the investors for you. What we're talking about here, and the reason this is the perfect strategy, the perfect structure for people that are regularly selling property deals, is that you build up a relationship with your investors. So let's say that you sell 100 properties, let's say that you find 100 properties. You don't need 100 investors for those 100 properties, you probably need 20. But you need 20 good investors, which is why we've structured it in this way. So you've got your active clients, and then you've got your mailing list as well. Now, for all the people that have been, you've put it into the mailing list, the way that you would manage them is you'd send them an email. You'd send them an email maybe, I don't know, once every 2 weeks, once every 4 weeks, something like that. And that email might be all of the properties that you've sold in that previous 2 weeks or that previous month. Or it might be a brochure that you've created from the CRM and then just sent it out with the, redacted details, but with lots of information on there about the property, just to see that if anybody in that mailing list is now ready to go into your active client list. So that's the way that you would manage them. And then obviously you've got the not interested as well, for those people that are just tire kickers and not worth your time. Now, that's the basic structure. There's a couple of other things that I would require for anybody to get into my active client list. So I've already covered the source to order. We talked about that already. They have to sign the source to order to go into your active client list. But actually, I would require that they have also presented me with their ID, with proof of address and proof of funds for my Know Your Customer KYC checks. And I would also require them to have gone through an AML check. Now, that AML check isn't something that you should be doing yourself because it's fairly complicated. You should be using somebody like CreditSafe to do that AML check for you, something like £7 or £8. Now, bear in mind, you're not doing this to every single investor that comes into you. You're doing this to only the investors that you think can be in your active client list. And again, I am the limiting factor in this deal, right? If that investor pulls out, I'll find another investor. I've got no problem with that. However, if I pull out, that person's not going to be able to buy that property because currently they don't have the information to buy that property. So the way that I do this is I go through that original list of questions with them. I find out whether I get a good feeling from them and if I want them to be in my active client list. And if I do want them to be in my active client list, I say to them something like this. I would love to disclose all the information about properties to you, not only for this one, but for properties in the future as well. So what I'd like to do, you've already signed the source to order agreement, which is terrific. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get into the position where we can move quickly on properties now. And we do that by you sending me your ID and proof of address, and also the proof of funds that you have, and also doing an AML check as well. Now, I require that ID, proof of funds, and proof of address to be sent to me within 24 hours. And I'll send you a link to the AML check, and that also needs to be done within 24 hours. So everything that you give to investors, make it time bound. Don't just leave it floating in the air saying, oh, I need your KYC and I need your AML. And then just leave it up to them to sort of send it or not send it. Because then are they in your active client list? Are they not in your active client list? What exactly is the relationship? I like to make everything time bound so that everybody is very clear where we stand. If they haven't done it within 24 hours, if they haven't sent me the KYC and the AML, I send them an email and say, I'm just going to pop you in the mailing list because you haven't done the things that I require. To be honest, I might call them first and say, look, I really need these things to be done. You've got a couple of hours left of the 24 hours. So if you can get them over to me, great. Otherwise, I've got a list of people that are waiting to get into my active client list. And if you don't do it, then one of them will. And obviously what you're doing is you're testing out whether they're actually going to jump when you say jump. Because at the time when it comes to securing the property and then getting that property through exchange, they need to be doing what you're telling them to do. Otherwise, they could, faff around and piss the vendor off and the deal ends up going nowhere. And then you don't make your sourcing fee. And nobody wants that. Well, they might want that, but you don't want that. So remember as well, when it comes to that sourcing fee, that the source to order form states, and the reservation form, which we'll get to in just a second, also states that you're due your fee on exchange of contracts. So for me, when I've been selling deals, I've stayed involved in the deal until exchange of contracts, at least until exchange of contracts, to make sure the deal goes ahead. Because if it goes ahead and it goes through exchange of contracts, you make your money. Okay, all understood? So these are the things that are required to get that investor into your active client list. And at that point, you can introduce any property that you want to them, be it on Rightmove or Zoopla or whatever, any property that you want to them, if it hits their criteria, because now you have an in-depth understanding of their criteria, and therefore you can move that deal forward and you can sell that deal. And the security of that trade comes from your source to order form. And don't forget, there's lots of other things that the investor can do with you. They could JV with you. They could lend you money. You could you JV with them and go through the peer-to-peer platform. There's lots of different things that you can do. That's another benefit of asking those in-depth questions about them and their situation. Because the better you do that, the better you understand what they're looking for, the better it works for you. So brief overview, you list the deals, you get investor leads, you then go to the reservation form and you get paid on exchange. So that's when you've listed the deal. But then when you've now got a new deal, when you've been through that process, you don't necessarily have to list every deal that you find. Or let's say that you find, I don't know, let's say you find 16 deals this week, and then next week you find another 5. When you find those other 5 deals next week, the first place that you go is your active investors. And you might sell all 5 of those deals next week to your active investors now. And therefore, why would you list any of them? Well, really, the only time that you need to list deals with us is when you're trying to bolster or grow your investor list, either your active investor list or your mailing list. And that's a big change from the way that most people do it. You see all kinds of property deals that are on, every single property deal that people find are on Facebook. It shouldn't be done like that. You've got to be thinking efficiency. And this is much, much, much more efficient way of doing it. Oh, that's the end. I thought we were going to go to the reservation form. Let's go to the reservation form now then. So the reservation form. I'll just do a quick recap. You've listed a deal. You've got loads of investors. You call those investors. You organize those investors in your CRM into an active client list, a mailing list, and a not interested list. You find another 10 deals. Now, some of those investors would be appropriate for these 10 deals. So you call those investors instead of listing the property on the app. You call them straight away and say, I found something else. And because those investors have filled out your source to order form and they've done your KYC checks and you've done your AML checks, you can show them all the information. They've considered the deal that you've shown them and they're really interested in it. So they say, I want to go ahead. So now you use the reservation form. This is in the CRM as well. So you use the reservation form, and that reservation form states that they need to pay a fee in order to reserve the property. Now, what you should be asking for as a fee to reserve the property is your sourcing fee. So if it's going to cost £6 grand sourcing fee, that's your reservation fee. And you put that on the reservation form. If they fill out the reservation form and they pay their £6 grand, the property is reserved for them. And you organize that with the estate agent. If the property isn't reserved, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you secure the property then with the estate agent. You could have put in an offer that's been accepted for the estate agent previous to that. But that reservation form, the important thing is the investor doesn't necessarily know that. Now that reservation form means that property is reserved for them. So now you have the security of 2 contracts. First of all, the source to order contract that you've introduced that property to them, and therefore they need to pay your sourcing fee. And then secondly, when the reservation form is filled out, that means that on exchange of contract, you've already got that money sitting there for the reservation fee. And remember, the reservation fee is the same as your sourcing fee. And as soon as exchange of contracts hits, then you can transfer that money that you had put into a client account into your main business account. Because when you accept a reservation fee, that's not your money yet. That becomes your money on exchange of contracts. So that should be held in a client account. Now, if you don't have one of them, that's absolutely fine. You can use the one that we have at Source. So you can use our client account. And the details for our client account are on the bottom of the reservation form. So that's the process of selling deals through Rightmove. It's very, very, very simple. We have franchisees across the country that do it all the time, every day, using our system, using our process, and using our contract. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope that you've learned something. I hope that that's helped you. It's been another one of these presentations where I've got loads of information to pass across, and therefore I end up talking very, very quickly. So I apologize for that. But at least it's on video now so that you can go back and watch it again if I've talked too quickly for you to understand everything. But I hope that's helped you. Thank you very much for being here for this webinar, and I'll see you soon.